It's Final Four time in New Orleans. Let's talk about teams and the values that their leaders need to have to get them to the next level. Hi, Dr. Holly here. It's Final Four time. As you know, I am a major Duke fan. I have been since I was a little kid, before I even really knew what basketball was. This was my family's passion, what drives us. And a big reason that we were drawn to Duke as a family is because of their amazing coach, Mike Krzyzewski. He actually was friends with my family way before he became known to the rest of the world. And he is one that I have always admired and always will admire because of his values that he holds as a leader. For those who aren't as familiar with him, he's actually written a number of books on the subject. He is, when we're blessed, sometimes featured with Duke's Business School, and we'll do talks there. Maybe now that he's retiring, these things will be more likely to happen. Maybe not. He has earned the right to do whatever he would like. And part of why he's retiring is because of his sense of values and real commitment to his family. Like, he's realized it's time to step back and time to spend time with those that he loves. So him coming to New Orleans, our being able to witness his ending of his career has really inspired me to bring up the topic of leadership, because he is such a wonderful leader, as are all the coaches that have gotten to the Final Four at this point. And really the values of what a good leader is. I myself have been under a number of different leaders and different leadership styles. I've been in leadership roles myself. I've made a number of mistakes that those who have been under me, I'm sure, will be quick to point out. At times I've done some good things too. And so him coming and him being an inspiration to me and to a number of us who are leaders brought this topic up. So I thought, why not talk about what values as a leader are important to consider holding to help your team move to that next level. First of all, it's important to sit back and think about, what are your values as a person? A great way to do that is, of course, practicing things such as mindfulness or prayer or whatever will allow you to be in the moment and really pay attention to your deep sense of being, really dropping into your heart, your belly. What is it that really drives you? And what gives you that kind of physical reaction of, yeah, there it is, that passion? Because, knowing what drives you, what your North Star is, what truly is important to you, is going to determine what type of leader you're going to be. And if said leadership position is a good fit for you, because sometimes organizations or teams or whatever situation where you might be stepping into leadership may not hold the same values. So it's important to know that going in. In my humble opinion, some of the important values to consider holding when you're stepping into leadership is allowing yourself to empower those around you, allowing those on your team to develop so that they can also step into leadership roles. If you do this in a way that is skilled, a way, again, because I love Coach K, I got to refer to him. Think about how he brings his players up. He develops them from their freshman year, if they're blessed to stay with them all 4 years, into team captain. And then look at how many of his former players have been coaches of his. A former player is stepping in to take over for him. And this is because he's been really skilled at this empowerment and this development of those who are fortunate enough to work with him. And this is really, to me, the ultimate skill and value of a leader. It also, having been in leadership positions myself, I'll tell you, if you are willing to put your ego aside and empower those around you, you could make your job a lot easier, because you can delegate while they are developing their skills as leaders. They can maybe take over some of the tasks that don't bring as much joy to you, because let's face it, there are things that we have to do as leaders that aren't always fun, and maybe aren't things that drive us, but maybe things that drive our team. So it's important to not only be willing to empower them, but be willing to listen to them and figure out, what are their skill sets? What are they looking to develop? What are things that they could maybe improve on if given the opportunity and support? Because that's another part of it, right? Like, you want to empower them, but you need to be there to support them and to let them bounce ideas off you, let them make mistakes, and allow space for that. make it a safe space, which is part of that. Having a vision that you communicate to your team and allowing your passion to show around this vision, again, right up there. No, having the team inspired to be under one vision, whatever it may be, if it's, I work a lot with veterans. If it's making sure our veterans are served in a way that keeps them feeling respected and honored, or if it's, I think of my dear friend, Chef Amy, I'm on the Fill the Needs board. She is determined to make sure those who have dealt with disasters are taken care of. So she's really got a great skill set of determining their needs, determining what people have to offer, and connecting those people together, and also making sure everything has integrity, which is another value to hold. Communicating, oh my gosh. So making sure everybody is on the same page. It's great if you know what the vision is and you know what your plan is 5 steps down, but if your team doesn't know, that's how rumors start. That's how they start coming up with headlines that aren't necessarily the truth, because the human brain loves inventing things. And sometimes what we invent are our worst case scenarios. So if we're worried that our boss or our leader is maybe not working in our best interest, or wants to fire us, or thinks that we aren't great, like, we're going to start coming up with scenarios in our head. And so really the best thing you can do as a leader is to communicate what the needs are of the team, communicate what your vision is, communicate what we need to work on. And, for me personally, because I've been under a number of different leaders, I need to know why. Oftentimes a mistake I've noticed leaders make is communicating what the next step needs to be. And maybe if you're lucky, a step after that, but failing to explain what the reasoning is behind it. I've noticed my children are blessed to be at a school with a great theater director, and they're about to put on a play. And I've noticed the theater director does something that's really wonderful that I think leadership should take a note of. That he explains why the kid is doing what they're doing on stage and the motivation behind it. And also when he's teaching them about stage presence and stage awareness, he's explaining why. Like, hey, Susie, if you stand there, the people in these seats can't see Joey. So in their little brains, the connections are made as to why they're standing there, instead of just stand on that mark because I said so. Because if you stand on that mark because I said so and Joey moves, then he doesn't get seen. So you have to be aware of why you're standing on the mark. And that is true in leadership and in business as well. If I understand why my boss needs me to do something, I've got a really creative brain. That's actually one of my skill sets, is coming up with creative solutions. So when I've been blessed with bosses who are willing to explain to me why, I'm willing to go to them with my ideas, which then they can bring to their bosses and look amazing. So really open yourself up to what your team has to offer to you by letting them know your why. And again, keeping that on an honest level. It's really easy, again, because you want to keep things not so scary, to not explain the full reason. It's okay to maybe be a little bit like Santa Claus about it. Like, maybe they don't need to know all the nitty gritty if it's super upsetting and isn't something that affects them directly. But if it's something that could affect them, it's important to let them know that and to be honest and not to treat them like children. Reinforcement. This is a big one, right? And this is a hard one. Again, knowing how to communicate to your team. So folks are doing these amazing things, and if they don't feel noticed, the motivation to continue to do the amazing things, this is why we had the big quit. This is why people decided it's time to get out of there. This is why I left my job. If you're not telling someone who's amazing that they're amazing, they're going to find someone else to tell them they're amazing, because that affects how people view themselves. That affects their self-esteem. That affects their interactions with not only their team members, but with their family when they go home. Because if you beat them down, they're not going to survive their position with you. And honestly, they're going to turn into a worker that isn't so great. But if you're reinforcing the positive, it's just like we do with our kids, right? When my son eats his vegetables, then he gets his ice cream. I give him that positive reinforcement. It's also important to have accountability. So if folks are not holding their weight on the team, it's important to make sure you're addressing that in a way that's fair in a way that other team members maybe understand is going to happen. You don't have to humiliate anyone, but it is important that everyone feels like they're on the same level as far as how you're treating them and how you're respecting them. Having some empathy. I mean, I've referenced Chef Amy working with folks with disasters here in New Orleans. We've had hurricanes, we've had tornadoes lately, we've had the pandemic. People have so many things going on in their lives that you may not be aware of. Some things are like the ones I've mentioned are in the news and are obvious, but you don't know. You don't know what they're going home to. You don't know what they're coming from. You don't know their background, how much they've worked to get there to where you are and they are at. And so having a little empathy, allowing yourself to listen, like really listen, not listen so that you can say whatever correction or whatever thing you went to have that meeting about, but listening to their perspective. As these big organizations talk about diversity and talk about bringing more women in and more people of color, you've got to respect that these people have different backgrounds. And the only way you're going to learn about those backgrounds is to open up those ears and close the mouth. There's a reason there's two of these and one of these. You've got to listen. You've got to allow yourself to realize you may not be right all the time. Listen, I get it. I'm an Irish woman. Like, I love being right. Ask my husband. But sometimes I'm not right. And the only way I'm going to learn that is by listening to those who are around me, listening to those I'm honored enough to have working with me, and allowing their opinions to be heard. And again, having some empathy to maybe what their situation is. So if their child is sick, or their mom has Alzheimer's, this is something that I need to listen to. Or if their culture determines that they interact in a different type of way. When I started working at the VA, I was a young doctor, and I kept having these veterans call me Miss McKenna. And, at first my ego got in the way. And then a female vet who I was blessed enough to work with said, Holly, Miss is what we call officers. That's a sign of respect in the military. And I took myself back. I got out of my own way and I realized this is a sign of respect. Eventually they remember to call you doctor, but when they're calling you Miss, it's different than calling you your first name in the military. So just putting that out there for the docs who work at the VA. Again, showing respect, having that empathy. And then lastly, having some humility, having some grace, allowing yourself to not always be right, allowing yourself to realize that you don't always have the answer. And allowing yourself to realize sometimes you might get burnout too. Sometimes you might have a bad day. Sometimes your communication style may not be so great. And taking a step back and owning that. I have the most respect for leaders who have apologized to me when maybe they've said something that didn't go over well, because I come from a different background than them as a woman and who's had to work really hard in medicine and has oftentimes not been heard in medicine because it is such a sometimes toxic masculine environment. And I say that with love and respect to my male colleagues, but unfortunately that's how our system was built. And so bringing more of the divine feminine energy is what my calling has been as a healer. And part of that divine feminine is allowing for yourself to be humble, allowing for yourself to have integrity, allowing for yourself to realize that you're not always going to have the answer, and that's okay. So with that, I'm sending you lots of love. I appreciate all of you. I appreciate the struggle that each of us have gone through. We're each coming from a different background. When we're blessed enough to be in leadership, it's really imperative that we take the hands of those around us, pull them up alongside us, and listen to what they have to say. All right, guys, have a good